he is a CEO coach. So I love that. We're going to speak about tips and about Charlie's experience taking 100 flights a year and coaching some of the best CEO out there in the Thailand, Hong Kong, pretty much Asia area. So I'm eager to talk about that. Charlie's also the founder at Progress U. So we're going to talk about that business too. Charlie's originally from Germany, right, Charlie?
That's right, yes.
And he has quite the career. So we're going to discuss about that today as well. Before we do this, podcast has been brought to you by podpire.com. If you want to start, scale, or be invited to a podcast, or even to sponsor up on a podcast. Podcasts are pretty amazing. You can get great guests like Charlie, get insights from them. You can reach their audience. They can reach your audience. Pretty win-win. It's like the deal of the century nowadays. I feel there's going to be a 14 months windows before everyone starts doing this podcasting. And obviously, by the way, podcasts, they do generate a bunch of leads and clients. Podpire.com if you want to start, scale, or be invited to a pod. Charlie, welcome to the pod. Can you tell me a bit more about yourself and about your businesses?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Charles. It's really a pleasure to talk to you today. I originally was actually in a very different business. I was trained as a mechanical engineer and then went into international sales and management. In my last corporate role, I was running a high precision measuring instruments company from Germany. I was running the Asia Pacific region for them. And then about 20 years ago, I made a transition to become an executive coach. That was also the time when I founded Progress U. Yeah, and here I am today.
Here you are today coaching some of the best CEOs on the planet. Tell us as per why you decided to become a CEO coach.
Yeah, it's interesting. It goes actually quite back into the late 1980s when I studied mechanical engineering. At that time, to be honest, I found it a bit boring. And so I found an interest in psychology. But long story short, I didn't really follow that at the time. But I did hear about coaching the first time around 1988, 89, something like that. At that time, coaching was totally new in the Western world and totally unknown of in the Eastern world. And so I thought, that time being in my mid-20s, I thought, this is something I'm going to do when I have maybe gray hair or less hair, as it turned out. And so I put it in the back of my mind. And lo and behold, about 15 years later, when I considered a career change, coaching again came across my radar, and I thought there was something, and this is something I need to do. So why is this exciting to me? I guess that was your question. And the reason is I really love to deal with very challenging situations. I was always not going the easy way. I was always looking for meaningful challenges. And I can't think of much more challenging things than coaching top CEOs who are very successful in what they are doing and help them to take it even further.
Right. CEOs, what kind of problems do you see them having nowadays?
It's a bit hard to generalize, but I can maybe highlight a few things that I tend to come across quite often. Believe it or not, quite often they have challenges dealing with their emotions. And the emotions get in the way of making maybe optimal decisions, get in the way of relationships, that they don't deal with it in the best way. And that can actually lead to suboptimal results. And another thing that I often face is that they have very competent teams, and yet they don't work as a team. They work pretty much as silos, and as a result, they miss a lot of opportunities to be more innovative, to make better decisions, and so on. Interestingly, these top leaders, CFO, CMO, COO, whatever you call them, they often believe because I reached that level, I'm the expert. I don't need anyone else telling me anything. And that's why they tend to operate in silos, right? And what they don't realize is that actually their colleagues might have very different perspectives to their business, which could be extremely beneficial. And often I do not just one-on-one coaching, but also working with teams, top leadership teams, and help them see that, to help them find ways to better be productive as well as positive with each other.
Right. And what cultural difference do you see between CEOs in the Asian region vs other parts of the world?
Yeah, I was told when I came to Asia, and I was told by other coaches, that it will take longer to build trust with Asian CEOs than with Western CEOs. Interestingly, I didn't ever feel that. Now, I'm not sure if it's because of me, because before I became a coach, as you said, I had 100 flights every year. And so I was very used to tune into different cultures really fast, because quite often I would just go for 2-3 days to any country I went to. So I had to learn to tune in really quickly. And I think that helps me also dealing with, for example, Asian CEOs.
And what's the difference between them and other CEOs?
I think one of the things that I still notice as a difference in Eastern culture and Asian culture, they still have a very strong belief, if I'm the CEO, I need to know everything better than everyone else. And so I need to tell people what to do, essentially. And in Western countries or with Western CEOs and their direct reports, they will not really appreciate that at all. They want an open dialogue, they want an open discussion. And of course, with generation changes, with younger people now, maybe in their 40s, moving up to the C-suite, they also don't like it. They also don't want to be told by the CEO what to do. So the CEOs need to learn to let go, to learn to not control so much, and to be open to hear what other people have to say. And actually, I often believe that the best leader is the leader who believes that I lead in the best possible way if I make myself redundant. Yeah, if I get my people to operate so well that they don't need me anymore, then I actually did a really good job at leadership. But that's not a concept many Asian CEOs have internalized yet.
Any instances when you've seen burnout in CEOs? Like, what is the mindset not to have in the CEO position, and what is the mindset to have if you want to thrive, perform, and avoid burnout?
Yeah. It happens usually more with a bit younger CEOs, because those CEOs who are in their 50s or even 60s, they somehow wouldn't be still there if they burned out along the way, right? So it tends to happen with CEOs who reach that level in their 40s or so, that after a few years, they are kind of done. And the mindset that they need to have is really to separate taking things personally versus being fully engaged. I actually learned that the hard way in my second corporate role, where I was completely burned out by the end of 2 years only. And I quit. I had a new job, but I had about a month in between. And I took that month to reflect what happened just now in these last 2 years. And how do I make sure this won't happen to me again? And you know what happened at that time, I realized could happen again. So I realized I cannot avoid shit to happen, right? But it really depends on how I process it, right? And up to that point, I took it very personally. When things didn't work out, I took it personally. When I made a mistake, I took it personally. When people cornered me, I took it personally. And that takes a lot of energy out of you, and that stresses you out eventually. So what I realized is, okay, don't take it personally, take it seriously. Yeah, take it seriously, but not personally, ever. I actually just had that conversation with my daughter also. She tends to take things also personally. And I just had the same conversation with her. And that takes a bit time to really make that shift in their mind.
At some point, you traveled 100 times a year. Like, what lessons did you learn from taking an airplane 100 times a year, which is completely crazy? I thought taking the planes 20 times a year was intense in my case. What did you learn from that?
I learned that some airlines have pretty bad food.
Pretty
Yeah,
bad
but
service too.
that was not your question, of course. No, what did I learn? In terms of cross-cultural competence, there's one thing I learned. You know, it's okay if you learn, you should maybe you use two hands with your name card in China and stuff like that. But that's actually not really important. It's nice if you know it, it's appreciated if you do it, but that's not what matters really. What matters is two things. You can really boil it down to two things. One is that you are sensitive, that you pay attention, because you will make mistakes in a different culture, right? And others will give you a hint when you make a mistake. Yeah, they know you are not Chinese. They know you're not French. They know you're not Japanese. So they give you a hint when you make a mistake. And if you pick up that hint and adjust, they will be totally fine, right? Where they start to get upset is when they keep giving you hints and you ignore them, right? Then they think, okay, you're not sensitive to our culture. And the second thing is, of course, the willingness to adjust. That you say, okay, I go out of my comfort zone, even though this is not my preference, but I know in this culture it's expected, okay, I'll do it. Yeah, that's the second thing. And if you do these two things, if you're sensitive and are willing to adjust, you can deal pretty much with any culture.
So is that what you learned from flying to 100 places, the culture differences and the lessons there?
Yeah, that was one of the things. The other thing that I learned is how you travel. I, for example, stopped very soon to drink alcohol on the plane. Yeah, very rarely I would drink a small glass of wine or so, but alcohol is really dehydrating you, and in the plane you get dehydrated anyway, so you need to drink water like crazy, really. And if you do that, and if you don't eat too much salty stuff, then you actually will not have such a strong jet lag. You will actually get through it much better. Yeah, so actually the whole water management is actually quite crucial.
Right. I fully agree with that one. And I was speaking with a client of mine this morning who was jet lagged. I always recommend when you land, go do a workout, even if it's late. Sun exposure if you can. If it's in the morning and you don't want to sleep, like sun exposure is a huge one.
Yeah.
And yeah, just like getting in the action, getting in the culture, go win a coffee or something and adapt, you know, even if you're tired, try to push it a bit further so that you can adapt to the time zone officially.
Yeah, exactly. Really live in the time zone that you fly into, unless you leave within 1 or 2 days and go back to your 6 hours difference or whatever, then it makes maybe no sense. But if you stay a few days or a week or longer, get into the time zone right away. If you know, I found that it's easier to fly west than to fly east. Yeah, when you fly west, it tends to be less stressful than if you fly east. And there's a reason for that. The reason is actually the sun. Because when you fly west, you fly with the sun, right? When you fly east, you fly against the sun. So time kind of passes faster in a way, right? And so it's usually easier to fly west. So if you want to do a round the world flight, which I've done a few times, fly west.
I agree with that.
Downside to it. There's one downside. If you fly west, you usually get the American Airlines, and I much prefer the Asian Airlines.
Why Asian Airlines, are they better or?
Yeah, they tend to have much better service.
You started various businesses. in Asia, like what are the challenges of starting businesses there and getting clients? I mean, once they see that you're not part of their culture, physically looking, like, is that challenging or?
It can be challenging, it can be an advantage, depending on what it is and where you are. And language can, of course, also play a role, right? If you don't speak the local language. Now, I started my first business in Hong Kong. And in Hong Kong, one thing is really great: to start a business is super easy. You can do it within a few days. It's up and running from a legal point of view. And even running the business, you have very little to do around taxes and regulations. So it's still a pretty free country in that sense. I shouldn't call it a country because it's part of China now, but it's still relatively simple to run a business in Hong Kong. But there's something else in Hong Kong which is a bit weird. At least I found it weird. Because I was starting a coaching company, and in 2002, when I started ProgressU, there were less than 10 trained coaches in all of Hong Kong. So the industry essentially didn't exist, right? And when you go to Hong Kong and you meet potential clients and you bring something that is new to Hong Kong that they don't know about, you will find a ton of interest. Yeah, they will be very excited. They will be very interested what this is all about. They're very curious, but they wait for someone else to do it first. So you get into this position until a number of companies or people have done it, nobody will do it. So it's a bit a chicken and egg problem, right? If you can't get a few people going, it's not going. And I've seen quite a number of people coming to Hong Kong were amazed by the excitement they got when they brought something new. And within a few months, they packed up and left because the excitement didn't turn into business. And so it takes quite a lot of patience and persistence to get something going until hopefully a few break the mold, and then it starts to take on its own dynamic. That was something I didn't expect, really.
And sometimes people tell you yes, but they're just being polite.
Correct.
And they don't really want to buy in the end. So it's kind of this very respectful, like almost too much respectful and politically correct culture, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. They don't want to tell you in your face, good idea, but not for us. They won't say it like this.
Right. Your business, like what prices do you charge usually for a CEO? What do your packages look like, and what are the achievable KPIs there to reach after some time that you work with a CEO?
Yeah. So let me say CEO is not equal CEO. It's a bit different if it's a small family company with 50 employees and I coach the CEO or founder of that company versus the CEO of a company with 20,000 employees across the world. I will have a bit different rates, but the range is typically between around 600 to $1,000 an hour. But then I sometimes make packages that go, for example, over 6 months or so, where certain things are to be achieved, and it's not necessarily by the hour. And such a package could be anywhere between $10,000 and $20,000 to achieve certain outcomes.
What would be these outcomes usually?
Yeah, so sometimes we measure the outcomes actually through so-called 360-degree assessments before and after. That works particularly well if it's real behavioral changes. So for example, I had one CEO who was really very smart, was very well liked actually, but he was a lousy public speaker. He was a lousy communicator. But everyone knew he's a really nice guy. He's really good, has his heart at the right place and all of that. So we did the pre-360 before the coaching started, where we measured certain aspect of communication. and we got certain scores based on that. And then we said, okay, how much improvement can we expect by the end of the coaching? And we put certain scores for that. And then we did the coaching over about 5-6 months. And then we measured again. We did the same 360 with the same people again. If someone left, we took them out from the previous calculation. And then we could clearly measure, did that improvement actually happen? If it didn't happen completely, we had the chance to extend the coaching without extra cost to maybe reach it 3 months later, or to take a cut in the fee. That would be the two options in this case.
All right. And what are your goals this year? Because you've been doing that for quite some time now. What are your objectives for the remaining months of that year?
You mean 2023?
Right.
Yeah. My goal is actually to get involved with at least 2 CEOs, helping them with their corporate culture. One of the things that I started specializing in about 10-15 years ago, actually around 2008-9, I started with that, was the whole topic of corporate culture. And it's a pretty hot topic nowadays. It's again one of those topics, everyone talks about it, but not many do something about it yet. But they realize that culture is so critical for strategy execution. And so that's actually one of the areas I've been specializing in. I came up with some very interesting approaches to achieve that. And so I want to get 2 more clients that buy into this and start working on their corporate culture with my help.
All right. And where can people find out more about you, Charlie?
They can go to my website, https://ceocoach.net, ceo-coach.net. Yeah, so ceo-coach.net. That's, or they can also go to progressu.com. That would be like progress with the letter U at the end.com. These would be 2 websites where I'm mostly engaged.
Right. And I'm Charles Cormier, host of CEOwisdompodcast.com. If you want to start, scale, or be invited to a podcast that is Podpire